begotten Son, that whomever believeth him should not perish, but have everlasting life. There was a little boy in Jackson. He was living on the streets and it was cold one night. He had these papers here. He normally sells them to make his money on the streets here. But it was so cold that night, the people were going in and out, and he couldn't sell the papers. It was so cold, he didn't know what to do. So as he began to walk down the street, he seen a policeman there, and he said, "Hey, mister," he said, "I have a place where I live in the alley there on North Street." But he said, "It's so cold tonight." He said, "If I don't live in that alleyway tonight," he said, "I'm going to freeze." He said, "Mister," he said, "Do you know where I can go for tonight? Just on this really cold tonight. Just one night. Is there anywhere I can go and get off of the streets tonight?" He said, "I don't have enough money to stay anywhere tonight." As the policeman began to look down at the little boy, and he said, "Son," he said, "if you'll go up the street, take about 3 blocks, and go on the east side there, he said, you'll see a big white house. When you see this big white house, knock on the door and this lady's going to come to it. And when she opens the door, you look up at her and you say John 3:16. He said, "Okay, I think I can do that." So he began to get his newspapers and gathered them up, and he took off down the streets. And he found the house, and he went on up there and he knocked on that door, and here she come. She began to look down at the little fella. She could smell him before she even opened the door. She looked around. No one else was around. And he said, "Ma'am," John 3:16. She paused for a minute. She said, "Baby, it's mighty cold out here." She said, "Why don't you come on in?" So he came on in. She took him in there by the fireplace, set him up in this big old rocking chair. As he was sitting there, he was beginning to warm his hands, she took off to another room. As he got his little hands and he was warming, he was shivering like a leaf, but as he took his hands and he warmed them up against that fire, he said, "You know, I don't know what John 3:16 means, but I do know this. It sure doesn't make a cold boy warm on the inside." He began to sit there a little bit longer as he got warm. He began to hear her coming down the hallway. As her steps were coming faster and faster, he just knew he was fixing to have to leave. And she said, "Baby," she said, "are you hungry?" He said, "Oh, yes, ma'am." He said, "I'm hungry. I could use something to eat, too." She grabbed him by his little hand, and she took him in there to the kitchen. She set him at the table, and he thought, "My goodness, I've never seen this much food in my life." He said, "Ma'am," he said, "sometimes our dumpsters just have bones. There's not very much food on those bones in the dumpsters when we're digging. And sometimes we can get something out the back of McDonald's when they throw it out in the dumpster there." As he began to sit there, he began to eat and eat and eat. And she said, "Baby, how long has it been since you ate?" And he said, "Ma'am," he said, "it's probably been 4 or 5 days since I ate." And her little heart was breaking. She left again. When she left, he really began to eat. He began to fill it on in because he didn't know if it was going to be another week before he got to eat. As he got through, he was sitting there looking at his empty plate. He said, "You know what? John 3:16. I don't know what it means, but it sure makes an empty soul full." She began to hear the lady coming down the steps. He began to look and he said, "Oh no, I guess I had to go back in the cold again." He said, "Look, since you're here, son, why don't you just stay with me tonight? Because it is so cold out there." He said, "Yes, ma'am, I would like that." So she grabbed this little fella by the hand and she began to walk him up those stairs. She said, "What, son? I'm going to go into the bathroom here and I'm going to fill you a big old tub full of bubble bath." So as he began to wait, she went in there and she fixed him up. She left again. He hopped in there, just like my boys did when they were little. He began to get his little hands full of those bubbles. He began to put them on his face. He had him a big old jolly beard, just like Santa Claus did. And he said, I think this is the first bath that I have really ever had. And he said, oh, wait, no. He said, I remember about 3 years ago, in Jackson there, close, he said, the fire hydrant blew off. He said, I got to get under the fire hydrant, so this is really my second bath I've had. As he began to sit there splashing in the water, he said, John 3:16. I still don't understand John 3:16, but I can tell you one thing about John 3:16. It sure makes a dirty boy clean. He got out, he got ready. She had his pajamas laying there. He opened the door, he said, Ma'am? He said, I'm ready now. She began to get him. She put him in the bed. She pulled the covers up over him nice and snugly. Folded him down. She leaned him over. She leaned over just like us moms do. She gave him a kiss on the forehead. She said, baby, I want you to enjoy your night here. She shut the door. He began to look out the window there. He could see that the snow was falling down, and he began to think of his buddies there in the alleyway, how cold it was in that alley. But with it snowing and really cold that night, he was wondering when he left the next day if there were going to be any of his friends there left. He knew they were hungry and they were going to be even colder than usual because his friends didn't have anything to eat in days. But as he began to turn over and get warm, he began to think again, John 3:16. What is this John 3:16? I don't understand John 3:16. What is John 3:16? He said, I know one thing about John 3:16. He said, it sure makes a weary boy full. He says, I can rest. I've been tired. But I can rest. There's something about this John 3:16. So he began to sleep that night. Morning came before he knew it. He could hear her coming up the steps. As she started coming up on, he said, oh, this is it. I've got to go. I said, baby, did you sleep good? Yes, ma'am, I did. So they went back downstairs. She put him in that big rocking chair. As he began to sit in front of that rocking chair and he warmed up because he knew it was coming, he knew in the back of his head he was going to have to go before long. This time when she set him in that rocking chair, she began to pull the Bible out. She turned the pages to John chapter 3. Verse 16. He said, baby, let me read this to you. It said, for God so loved this world, he gave his only son. Whoever believes in him should not perish, have everlasting life. Right then and there, he gave his heart and life to Jesus in the position of where he was. He had to leave and go back on the streets. Because this woman, she often took people in off of the streets then. As he began to walk on the street, he really still couldn't comprehend that John 3:16. He said, I get it. And I feel so different on the inside. But John 3:16. Why me? How could someone come and give their life for me. Because he loved you. He loved you. He loved you.